I'll never forget the feeling of flipping through a GamePro magazine in 2006, poring over the first still screenshots of Smackdown vs. Raw 2007. It's a high that, quite frankly, I've been chasing for almost 20 years now. Now, this wasn't just another Smackdown vs. Raw game. I mean, it was, the third actually, but it was the first SVR game to be on the next-gen HD powerhouse, the Xbox 360. And if the initial screenshots weren't enough to have me frothing at the mouth, the first motion trailer certainly was. And I have to say, the game lived up to the hype. It was gorgeous. The presentation was jaw-dropping at the time, from the lighting to the wrestler textures themselves. I mean, what caught my eye immediately was that the wrestlers actually poured sweat as the match progressed. I remember seeing that for the first time and thinking, wow, it will never get any more real than this. We have reached the peak of wrestling game graphics. But it wasn't just the visuals. When I finally got my hands on the game and started experimenting with the new drag grapples, I knew I was dealing with something special. Having total control of a grappled opponent was awesome. Being able to drag them anywhere, throw them into different environmental situations like the ropes, the turnbuckle, the ring steps, the announce table, the barricade, whatever. And then being able to control the amount of times as well as the speed in which you ram your opponent's head into said objects? This went such a long way into making the gameplay feel more immersive, like you were taking part in a living, breathing match. You could also lift opponents and walk around, adjusting carrying positions as you go. Total control. Brawling outside the ring was a big selling point of this game too, and it was a breath of fresh air to be able to fight in the crowd again, even if it was in a limited area. It was cool to watch popcorn fly out of the hands of the fans when you threw an opponent over the railing into them. They could hand you weapons like in Def Jam, you could taunt with them. It felt really immersive and cool at the time. Now, the roster itself is nothing to write home about, don't get me wrong, but that was kind of the state of affairs in the year 2006. There weren't as many main event players on the scene, but the mid-card, I think, was very rich with guys like Mr. Kennedy, Carlito, Johnny Nitro, and they're all here in this game, and I believe that's another reason why SVR07 holds such a special place in my heart. I'm so nostalgic about that roster in particular. Granted, this was definitely a transitional period on WWE television between the Ruthless Aggression era and the PG era, but I believe this game captures that essence so masterfully. Everything about its presentation, they captured it, they nailed it. I think GM mode was better than ever in 07. It built on the predecessor 06, the first edition of GM mode, and I don't think it was as empty and hollow feeling as General Manager mode was in 2008. I'm not going to bash on that game. I love that game, but you got to admit the 24/7 mode, the season in GM mode, it definitely had its issues. I think 07 nailed it. I love the rivalry system. I love being able to hire the different writers for different storylines. They had different packages for each writer, and you could pay them accordingly. Some of them were very expensive, but you could kind of balance that with your roster and your needs for to fill in those rivalry roles. I also like that they added heat and velocity to each show, so if you were trying to build up younger talent that you didn't want to ruin your main show card because they had low popularity, you could do that. It added a nuanced level of strategy that was missing from the last edition of GM mode, and it was my favorite mode. I loved putting together a roster and playing my matches, playing through shows. I loved the WWE.com feedback after each week. It looked, at the time, if you guys remember, just like the WWE.com homepage did. It's so nostalgic looking back at it now. I loved reading about the championship switches, the ratings changes, any injury news, it was all there. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about GM mode. I also want to talk about season mode. It's pretty similar to 2006, but I do like the locker room hub a lot better in 2007, being able to customize the entire locker room from the floor to the wall to the stairs. I like having your little desk there with WWE Magazine. You could read about the storylines happening at that point in time in your season mode. I like being able to check your messages and hear from other superstars, and that's primarily how I guess the stories are told. You get occasional cutscenes, but for the most part, it's told on that little BlackBerry phone or whatever the hell that's supposed to be. I like this. It's not as good as previous SmackDown games, But I think we reached our peak in Shut Your Mouth in terms of season modes, and then it progressively got a little bit worse each year. 2006 and 2007, I think you could interchange. I don't think either of those are the greatest, but I do like both of these season modes a hell of a lot better than 24/7 mode in 2008, which is just nonsensical, and it's so glitchy, and things you do don't even make sense in that game, and storylines just repeat. I would rather have this 06-07 style. And I'd rather have this 06-07 style over Road to WrestleMania down the road as well. No pun intended there. But, in the later SmackDown vs. Raw games, that's what we had. I like the 07 season mode. I like some of the storylines in there. Some of them are a little silly. But I do like that you get that message from Teddy Long or Bischoff at the beginning of the season mode that promises you a title shot if you win consecutive matches. Unlike other season modes, this is actually honored. In 2008, sometimes you get promised a championship match and then you just wouldn't have one. You'd become the number one contender and the next story you're in is not a championship storyline. At least in 2007, it has some continuity. Things you do actually matter to an extent. I like that a lot about it. And thinking about it now, to be honest, the thing I looked forward to the most each year with these SmackDown vs. Raw games was experiencing the new season mode for the first time, venturing into the unknown, not knowing what awaits me in these storylines, not knowing the branching paths that lie ahead, not knowing which roads I'm going to go down. That was all part of the fun. I love these SmackDown vs. Raw season modes, and yes, they're not as good as other season modes, but they're still a hell of a lot better than what we have today with My Rise, and I'll die on that hill. Also, because I didn't have the means to connect my PS2 online, this was my very first WWE game I got to play against other real-life people. And little known fact, you can still do that today. At least I think you can. I was able to access the online servers and search for a match. It's just no one was still playing this game in 2025 other than me. But hey, if you want to dust off your 360 and get a few games in, hit me up in the comments. I would gladly throw down a little bit of SVR07 with you. But anyways, yeah, all the features like uploading a championship, being able to swap superstar save data for custom created wrestlers, it was all still there. And these are things that we've come to know today as the community creations. That's what it evolved into. But it all started here. We had this in 2006. This game, once again, was really ahead of its time. So you got to tip your cap to it. But I want to circle back finally to the gameplay, because I do believe the gameplay is so fluid. It really is the star of the show here, and I think this is my favorite gameplay in the entire SmackDown vs. Raw series. I love the stamina management system. Now, you can toggle this on or off in the settings menu. I like having it on, though, just because it adds an extra layer of strategy and depth to the match, but I don't like the stamina systems we have today. There is nothing more frustrating than not being able to hit a move because you don't have stamina and you have to stand motionless for 5 seconds to recover just enough stamina to do another move or to be able to sprint back into the ring. That's just ridiculous. Sure, in this game you can be motionless and recover some stamina as well, but you can expedite that process by holding down select and rapidly gain your stamina back. I like being able to control that because if you have an added second of downtime in this match, you can get your stamina back up, and that kind of plays like a real match too. A real match has these little moments of downtime where, yeah, maybe they'll put somebody in a rest hold to regain stamina, but in this game you just hold down select, get your stamina back up, and then prepare yourself for the next move. The reversal system in this game is probably my favorite reversal system in any wrestling game ever. I hate the one we have today in 2K where you just press one button, it counters everything. I hate the ones we had in 2K19, I think it was, especially, where you had like 5 reversals you could do and then they were set on cooldown so you could run out of reversals and then you're just a punching bag for your opponent. In this one, you have right trigger and left trigger. One counters strikes, one counters grapples. You gotta keep your opponent guessing. If you keep getting countered, that's because you need to switch up your moves. You can't just spam stomps or arm drags. You gotta keep your opponent guessing. This little cat and mouse game added such an immense level of strategy to the game that I just can't stress. You gotta pick up the controller and try it yourself if you haven't. Am I going crazy? Am I alone in this, guys? Does anyone else miss this reversal system? I don't see this talked about enough. If there's one thing I could return from the old games to the new games, it's probably this reversal system. Well, that's not true. I would do away with the stun meter completely as well if I could pick one thing. But if I could pick 2 things, I would add the reversal system from this game. Guys, let me know if you feel the same way. But hey, I should probably end the video here. I could yap about SVR07 literally for hours on end, but I don't think anyone wants to hear that. I just wanted to share some of my personal memories of this game, why it means so much to me, how excited I was for this game. I mean, let me tell you, I was probably more hyped for this game than I had been for any game ever at the time and since, looking back at it. The hype for this game is part of why it lives in infamy. If you guys watched that live action trailer, if you saw the first stills from this, that jump from standard definition to high definition, I don't know if we're going to see a jump quite that big again. We saw from PS3 to PS4, the jump wasn't that big, and from PS4 to PS5, almost indistinguishable, right? And I feel like those jumps are going to get tinier and tinier as we go on. But this was a moment in history that I just had to relive. I had to capture it to live on in infamy on YouTube so I could just get my thoughts out there and look back on and be like, before I get all old and senile and forget, look back and think, wow, man, that was really a special time in wrestling gaming history. As always, guys, I appreciate you so much for watching, sticking around this far into the video. Please do all the YouTube stuff for me, like, sub, comment, all that good stuff, and I will catch you guys next time. Until then, be well and take care. Okay, and right here is the very spot that I was. My school bus dropped me off right here at this exact spot the day Smackdown vs. Raw 2007 came out. And I'll never forget getting off the bus and sprinting down this street. All the way at the end of this road was my house. I'll never forget sprinting home, so excited to play Smackdown vs. Raw 2007 the day it came out. And that run down this street is probably to this day the happiest I had ever been in my entire life.